And so, with a DJ and music production career spanning over 4 decades, my guest today has mixed, remixed, and reworked over 800 titles. He was amongst the first to construct and broadcast the early days concept of multiple artist megamixes, notably of extreme running times and attention to detail in quality. His annual Grandmixes have, since 1983, been heralded as true moments in dance music history, with his work influencing and kickstarting the careers of many notable contemporary DJs. To add to his unique audio sound and skill set, he entered the world of computer graphics and 3D animation in the early 90s, thereafter returning to music production with a vengeance, further expanding the creative potential of what one individual and highly creative producer could achieve. Solo album success and the biggest selling Grandmix ever followed on, and to this day he's still producing multi-format analogue and digital releases of groundbreaking reworks, both unique and highly collectible. Ben Liebrand, welcome to this interview and to the Mastermix platform.
Thank you so much for having me. So very excited about this interview. So I'm very happy to be here.
And it's great to see you just freshly back from Easter weekend of gigs, Ben.
Yes, just returned from the Netherlands. I had a couple of gigs there, and it's a bit of a travel, but really enjoying them.
Excellent. Well, it's good to see you again. So let's move way back into time to the late 70s, notably I think 1978-79. So it appears that you've had a combination of inspirational artists, DJs, studio recording, and even home audio recording equipment, home audio playback equipment that blended together to lead you into the world of DJing and production. Can you tell us a bit about the combination of all those elements that kickstarted Ben Liebrand as a DJ and producer?
Yeah. So as a young guy, I was very interested in electronic music. So at the time when most of the people were dancing to the soul tracks and the early Tramps stuff, I was at that time more interested in Kraftwerk, Jean-Michel Jarre, all the electronic stuff, and had a real interest for the combination of electronics and music. Isao Tomita was a thing I listened to a lot in high school, and the electronic music and the creation of electronic music was something that really fascinated me. And then in 1976, one morning, the clock radio flicked on at the alarm time, and the DJ was playing the B-side of a Donna Summer single. And the B-side of that 7-inch, the B-side, had I Feel Love by Donna Summer. And that kind of melded for me all my interest in electronics with dance music. And that was kind of for me the first revelation I experienced with that combination. And that really set me on a path of following what Giorgio Moroder was doing, and led to my huge interest in dance music. So those were actually the very first steps and the very first inspirations to what it all became.
And you also had a passion for the home audio entertainment systems at the time, quadraphonic, etc.
Yes, that was part of my interest in electronics, and way back then. Putting amplifiers together and getting old tape machines to work and recording stuff. And it was actually a couple of years later, I think in 1978, 79, that we went for a holiday trip to Italy, visited a club called the Yellow Cat, Gatto Giallo. And the DJ there was playing Gino Socio, Dancer, the whole album actually, Peter Jacques Band, Revenge, Macho, I'm a Man, and I bought a whole stack of records, just one village over, probably the same record store where the DJ got his stuff, and took all this stuff back home, and I wanted to let my friends hear the stuff I had bought, and I thought, I've got a whole stack of records. I'll just take my cassette deck and use the pause button to join all the best parts of these tracks. And I wasn't even keeping track of a BPM. I was just putting all the best parts of all these tracks and the beautiful breaks and the percussion, all that stuff together, to make a kind of a Reader's Digest of what I bought in Italy. And that happened to be, looking back, that happened to be my first, call it edit, of dance music. And yeah, that again kind of sparked another interest, another level of interest of pursuing that and seeing what more was possible, and synchronizing rhythms with tracks I already had, but also synchronizing stuff which was, wildly different from each other. I remember taking one of the slower tracks of the Jean-Michel Jarre album and feeding the rhythm of Queen Samantha, Take a Chance, under it. And that kind of was the first combinations I made, where I took a track which obviously had a tempo, but not a real strong rhythm, and adding a rhythm to that track and see how that panned out. And in whilst doing that, learning about and figuring out chord measure patterns and chord patterns and all that kind of stuff, and kind of noticing stuff that pleased me and stuff that annoyed me, and kind of finding my way through, how is it that this works and how is it that that doesn't work?
Yeah.
And then noticing, aha, here I lined up the 8-bar pattern correctly. And obviously, with every new point in the track, also something new happens in that 8-bar pattern. So maybe I should, look into how music is structured so these things line up more accurately and give a more 1 + 1 is more than 2 end result.
I see. So early days experimentation are very much the birth of the, with all due respect, your words, the nerd in you.
Yes, absolutely, absolute nerd.
I'll
Yes,
wear that badge with you, Ben. Don't worry.
yes.
So were you self-taught back then in every aspect of DJing, studio recording, and mixing? And because there's no internet, there was no manuals, there was no how-to or go-to, there was no courses. And whereabouts did you actually work on your early productions?
It was just in my bedroom, and in my bedroom, that goes all the way up to 1988. So I had gold and platinum productions awards hanging on my wall whilst I was still working from my bedroom. Coming back to the self-taught thing, I was actually being a light jockey in a club near Nijmegen, and a guy was the DJ there, Huip Luiten, and he brought with him the thing about mixing. He was just returning from the United States, and he heard it there, and he was trying that out as well. So that's the first time I heard mixing, and I didn't even hear the mixing. The only thing I heard is that he was playing pop music way faster than it normally should run, and I was wondering why he was doing that. And then it turned out that that kind of flowed into the next track, which obviously was the tempo, what he was aiming for. But he was just combining the record, so he was not looking into BPMs. He was not looking into the technical side of it. He was just trying stuff and see if he can line stuff up, and that's it. So I heard the mixing, but Hype was not a nerd in any way or fashion. So we didn't even have one single line, one single sentence of conversation about the mixing. It was just something that I picked up on, that he was doing that. And soon after, I found on the Vanguard label numbers with some mysterious acronym BPM behind it. no idea what that meant, but I did notice that one of them had 117 Players Association, turn the music up. Another one had 132. And then it was like, would it be that that kind of indicates how fast the record is? Later, I found out that what BPM stands for. And then I, got a decent stopwatch and started counting all my the tempos of all my records, and that kind of brought a structure in my record box, where obviously starting with the slow records and going faster up, and that was the first structure in what music I was playing, and that obviously brought some of the records together, which had a similar tempo, and it was these baby steps, just figuring out how stuff worked, and yeah, not having a reference at the time. That all the time, together with my huge passion for the technical side, the amplifiers, the speakers, whatever it took to play the records, whatever it took to record what I was doing, and that kind of was the combination that kind of pushed my interest forward.
Incredible. I had a similar kind of story back in the day. I think I was a year or so behind you for sure, but yeah, similar kind of story. So moving a little bit further forward, you've started to hone your skills and work out how to do stuff. This led you into the world of radio broadcasts, especially with Radio Veronica over in the Netherlands, which I believe was coast to coast, and the famous In the Mix, which transformed into the Mini Mix. Some of the latter actually getting so popular that they realized commercial release by the record labels. But in the then non-digitally connected world, Ben, did you actually realize the full impact at that time that those pioneering works had, both on DJs and the music-loving audience, or was this something you discovered later on?
Oh, I discovered that way later on, and the way it went back then is that I was spinning in a club called the Keizer Karel in the Netherlands, which stands for Emperor Charles, and I was DJing there, and I was already experimenting with two copies of a record and extending breaks and that kind of stuff. And then some guys came up to me and heard the editing I did. One of the first edits they heard was probably my edit of Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League, where in my edit, the boy says something, the girl answers immediately. The boy says the next line, the girl answers immediately. And they asked if I could help them with an edit, with an actual edit, so cutting the tape, and I did that for them, and that found its way to the record company. The record company guys owning the record company went golfing with the guy who ran Radio Veronica. They came into a conversation about Lex Harding from Radio Veronica said, here's stuff about mixing DJs that don't even talk anymore. They just play the music and kind of blend it into each other in some kind of way. And then they said, oh, well, you have to talk to Ben then, because that's what Ben does all the time. And that landed me the job at Radio Veronica. And I indeed became the first DJ on Dutch national radio who didn't say a word. And we even had a little interview prior to In the Mix, where Erik de Zwart would ask me a couple of questions, and I would be there in the studio in front of the open mic, and I just wouldn't answer. And then he would ask the next question, and it silence. And the next question, silence. And then you said, well, ladies and gentlemen, by now you probably understand that this is the DJ that does not talk. He just plays music, and he just mixes that music into each other. And that was kind of the introduction of In the Mix. A full hour on Friday night. And it got a huge amount of fans, which I later found out. But at the time, I didn't know, because at the time, making the mix, driving to the radio station, because I actually had to bring the tapes, and those were 2 tapes, because at 38 centimeters per second, you couldn't even fit 1 hour on one reel. So somewhere there needed to be a cross from one tape to the other. Anyways, driving to the studio, delivering the tapes, and then driving back home. And that's it. And there was no feedback whatsoever, even with the Grandmixes. Because with the Grandmixes, what I would do is that I would hand in the track list of the Grandmix, and whoever wanted to have the track list, they could send an envelope to the radio station, and they would make a photocopy and put it in the envelope and send the track list back. But nobody at Radio Veronica even bothered or thought about letting me know how many people asked for a track list. And I must say that it was also part of that in 1992 I decided, this is going to be the last Grand Mix, because here's me working all of December, and the pinnacle of putting all that together was going to the studio where a technician would be, and it could very well be that the technician in the studio was a hard rock fan, so he wouldn't give a rat's ass about what I was doing with dance and disco. His job was to put on the tape and play the tape. That's it. He didn't care. And so it was such a anticlimax every time when the Grand Mix is done. It was really spending something, building something a month, driving to the canal, dumping it over the edge, not even hearing a splash.
Wow.
So, and that was kind of, odd, very odd to see. People now can't imagine how it went back then, but that's how it worked. And just later on, I discovered how many people were religiously following these shows and the Grand Mixes, and making sure that they recorded them, making sure they had even multiple cassette decks to be able to record the full hour, tape decks or whatever. And that's something that I really only discovered years later.
Wow. So just flipping the script a little bit at that time. So what was your first remix that gained an official public release, Ben, and how did it come about?
So that was Rob and Bernard from The Limit. And Rob and Bernard visited the club where I was spinning, most weekends. And reason for that being is that the stuff that was being played there was all imports. So if they would come to my club and they would hear what I was playing, then they could take inspiration from that, record a song, put it out, and it would still be ahead of the curve with regards to the rest of the Dutch radio picking up on stuff like that. So Rob and Bernard, those were the two guys that came into the club and said, we've got this production, we got this thing, can you make this edit for us? And that was She's So Divine by The Limit. And that was, those were the guys talking to the record company talking to the guy on the golf course of Radio Veronica. And that is how that came to be with that first edit. And when I did that first edit, it took a week. By the end of the week, I was already doing a second edit for another production. And that same year, I did a first production in a studio. So that was what kicked it all off, those two guys.
Usually you hear about major corporate deals being struck on the golf course, but it was in fact Ben Liebrand's first remix. That's in the annals of history. I mean, speaking of remixes, Ben, can you recall the most challenging or troublesome remix project you've ever done, whether it was from a technical standpoint or from record company politics or whatever?
Yeah, that must have been my remix of You Sexy Thing by Hot Chocolate. And it was an assignment which I got somewhere in August, aiming for early November that it should be completed, so that it would be out way ahead of the holidays. And August came and went, and September came and went, October, November. And then I went into December, and December came and went because I couldn't get it to work. I just couldn't get a satisfied feeling about how the whole thing came together. And then in the first weeks of January, I really was like, I just want to get this thing off of my schedule. I just want to have it done with. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll just make it. I'll make it. I'll finish it. I'll make a long version, a short version, get it out of my way because I don't know. So what I did is I made a 12-inch version. I made a single edit, and then it was like, okay, I'll put something together for the B side. Make a little bit of a dub thingy going on, and then in doing that, I came up with the bass line, and it was like, shit, this is it. This is the bass line which it needs, and the bass line had a little triplet thing at the end going on, which I then doubled with the horn section following that that little line, and I thought this is it. This is what I've been looking for all the time, and it was the first realization is then that you've done your homework, which I did in finishing those first two versions. I've done my homework. Now it's time to play. And that feeling, now it's time to play, is something which was very important from that moment on, because then I realized that, sometimes you just have to take a step back, look at the whole thing differently. And I made that mix, and I remember delivering it to EMI on the 21st of January. Flew to the UK, met the president of EMI in London. He said, "Well, we need production copies right away," and he sent me to Abbey Road Studios, and I'm like, "Whoa, Abbey Road Studios!
Ben in
Well,
a toy shop.
oh wow, yeah, yeah." The Ben Liebrand, the nerd, in Abbey Road Studios, and all the copy rooms were occupied at that moment. So I got to copy the tapes in one of the main mixing rooms, and there were people there. And I put on this version I made of "You Sexy Thing," and it sounded fantastic. And the guy says, "Oh wow, this sounds great. Where was this mixed?" He said, "Well, it's mixed in my own studio in the Netherlands." And I didn't dare to tell them that it was actually my bedroom, and
Yeah.
that the whole thing was mixed onto ROR speakers, which are like Oratones,
Yeah.
same size as Oratones, but they have like a passive filter which gives them a more straight frequency response. So that's how they were made, and delivered the thing to EMI way too late. But the second thing I learned then that it's no use handing something in on time if it's just not done. Because if it's not done, you might make the guy from the planning department happy, but it'll never amount to anything. It'll never amount to a hit or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a second thing which I learned then, and which I took with me since then, that it is no use pushing someone to be creative, because it just has to come together. And if it hasn't come together yet, then you'll just have to wait. And it sucks that you miss a deadline, but it came out. It became a big hit. They
Yeah.
put this one single on the Hot Chocolate compilation album, vinyl back then, which went platinum in no time. And that's another lesson that, if it's something is a hit, everybody will remember that it's a hit, and nobody will remember that it was 4 months late. Yeah. So wise lessons learned there. Um, First, do your homework. When the homework work is done, and the homework is done at this point, is getting to know the whole multi-track, getting to know everything is there, and then it's time to play. And then when you have time to play, you don't have the pressure anymore of, I don't know, having to do your homework, because your homework is already done. And then all the creativity comes out,
Mm.
and you come to these results.
And of course, that ba-da-bum, bum, ba-da-dum is one of the most iconic things in remix history, if you don't
Yeah,
mind me saying.
it is,
It's
yeah,
a huge hook,
yeah.
and it just comes to you.
There
It
is,
just came.
and there's another one which is in "It Only Takes a Minute" by Tavares, and there is a sound which kind of sounds percussive, and it does a da 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 da, that little thing, similar to that little riff in Hot Chocolate. And when the first Take That track came out, it turns out it was a cover version of my remix of Tavares, It Only Takes a Minute, because it has that same da, 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 which was only in my remix and which was never in the original song. So, fun fact there. You're very welcome,
Amazing.
Take That.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks from Gary and the gang. Okay. So, look, developed in early life and/or continuing today, do you have a very precise pattern or schedule of workflow? For example, being totally absorbed in one project until absolute completion, or are you able to pop in and out of projects as and when the time or the opportunity allows, Ben?
Well, back in the day, and I'll move a little bit aside and point here at all the hardware which is in the rack here. Back in the day, it was all hardware. So you had your mixing desk, and at that time, talking about the time of You Sexy Thing, no, a little bit later, 88, 89, I had a mixing desk with 67 channels, which was enough to have one mix up on one end of the desk and have another mix up on the other side of the desk, which enables me to be working on a production and in the weekend make a mini mix on the other side of the mixing desk, because I would just mute channels, 1 to 24, and I still had enough channels to set up the mini mix as well.
Wow.
So that enabled me to work on two projects in between. Nowadays, it is all Total Recall, and it's all within Mac, and that enables me to pop in and out productions all the time. The huge advantage is this. Say, for example, I am working on three projects. I have to finish a mini mix, and I'm working on another project, and then the record company comes back to me and says, "Hey, can you work on an edit of something?" And I'm working on the beginnings of another remix. Now I can work on these three, do whatever I feel that needs to be done on one thing. I make an intermediate mix, open up the next project, work on that one, make an intermediate mix. And that's what I do. So I have all these intermediate mixes. I'll just stick them on my phone. And wherever I'm in the car, walking the dog or whatever, and have time to listen to these mixes, I'll just listen to them. And that's me listening to what I've done without seeing the screen in front of me. So it's just concentrating on the music and not being distracted on all the bars and all the, the whole arrangement on my screen, which is a different experience, and people should really try that. So then I'll have on my phone version 12, version 15, version 32, or whatever. I'll listen the whole thing through, and I'll just remember, like, that needs to go. That's 8 bars too long. The break should be 8 bars longer. The song doesn't introduce itself the way I want. I know it's an exciting song, but the way it builds now doesn't give me that excitement. So I'll try to find a new way of building into the song that gives me the excitement the rest of the song has. So I listen to these intermediate mixes one after each other. And when I open the project, I have no trouble whatsoever remembering all the things that annoyed me. And basically, that's what remixing is. Remixing is getting to work on a track and feeling that stuff starts to come together. And from that point on, is just taking away everything that annoys you until you get to the point like, okay, this run through was perfect now. There's nothing that sticks out in the wrong way. And there may be stuff that sticks out. There's maybe stuff that's supposed to stick out because it has a main role. It has the lead role in this, this music version of a movie, the main actor. And the main actor can be the main vocal, but it can also be something else in the track. So make sure that everything that needs to stick out sticks out, gets the right attention, and make sure that all the stuff that annoys me has been taken care of. And that's a perfect way of jumping back and forth between many, many projects I'm working on. Because when I was doing my Iconic Groove album, I think it was, I don't know, 15 or 16 tracks I was working on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
making the intermediate mixes, and remembering all the little flaws that still need to be corrected. So yes, I'm absolutely for doing it in that digital domain,
Mm.
and I've been working in the analog domain as well for many years. Um, Obviously, there people talk about the advantages of working in analog equipment, but I have found that if you know your tools, then the advantage of working total recall and being able to have total freedom in that way of finishing a track now and just getting back to the track a week later, hearing it with fresh ears, that totally outweighs any little last point of a percentage that analog equipment still might have.
Mm. Great answer, Ben. Thank you for that. So, on to the next question. You mostly handle every stage of your production work from programming, arrangements, keyboards, engineering, mixing, mastering. But have you occasionally collaborated or passed these production stage responsibilities to others and found that the results have not been what you wanted?
Well, that hasn't happened, and that hasn't happened for a completely different reason that you might expect. Because just a couple of years ago, I kind of realized that I am to a certain percentage on the spectrum, I believe, and that means that uh, I am in my bubble, and I love being in my bubble because in my bubble, people, this is my bubble. This is my safe place, and this is the place where I can, for example, work 4 months on a hot chocolate you sexy thing, and then decide this is crap. I need to do it differently.
Yeah.
And say I would have had to do that with somebody else beside me, that person would say, "But we've been working on this for 3 months," and I would be like, "I don't care because it just doesn't work, and I want to do it in a different way." To not have those conversations, the easiest thing is to do it yourself. But um, the being on the spectrum thing, it's really a thing because when I'm working in that way, and then when I'm in kind of hyper focus working on a project, um, if there would be somebody besides me giving input, it just would enter my brain as noise. It would just annoy me at that point. And give you another example. I remember on multiple occasions that my Brenda, my wife, would come in and ask me, "Do you want a cup of tea?" And I would be so concentrated on what I was working on, I I was not able to give an answer either way. I
Wow.
no, yeah, and I mean, and um, and also when recording vocals, Rob and Bernard, which great friends of mine, did many projects with them, all the way from that first "She's So Divine" track, which I did for their band The Limit, taught me big parts of production as well. And also, for example, when I have a vocalist in the studio, when the vocalist is there, that is the moment that they should perform. So I remember telling vocalists, like, we've done this take, but if you feel that you can do it better, let me know. Don't think Ben is okay, Ben is satisfied, let's get on to the next line. If you think you can do better, please let me know, because when you go home at the end of the session and you're sitting in your car and you're thinking back, like, the line is okay, but I'm sure I could have delivered a better performance, then it's too late. So here's the microphone, it's open now. This is the moment to do your performance. This is the moment to shine. And this moment may even hurt a little bit, because afterwards, if it's done, you'll be very satisfied of what you've achieved now. And so I know the importance of recording great vocals. At the same time, could not wait until they left, because then I could go back to whatever I recorded,
Hmm.
be in my bubble again, sort out whatever was recorded, put the best bits together, and looking back over the years, and for example, being in a club, and when I was in a club but not DJing, I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Feeling tremendously out of place. And if I add all these things up, I've been on the spectrum for decades, and that kind of kept me from doing these kind of collaborations. And I've even done remixes for current big artists, where the company says, yeah, okay, well, send me the parts, and then we'll send our ghost producer team over the whole thing. So, no, that's not going to happen. Yeah, but we want to send our ghost producer team over the whole thing. So, well, then it's not going to happen. Either you tell me what you don't like and I can fix it, but if I have to hand it over to somebody else and somebody else starts mucking about with the way how I feel it, no, then I'd rather not have the whole thing be released at all. So I'm very, very strict about that.
Yeah, I get it. I understand it. I empathize completely. Okay, so although your productions maintain a precision-like standard in audio quality, Ben, there seems to be a possibly signature formula that only the most essential sonic parts are placed to glue together a Ben Liebrand mini mix, remix, mashup, etc. In other words, only the most essential needed elements are used without over-cluttering the piece. Like everything that you add has a reason to exist there, and
Yeah,
you don't need to add any more of it. So can you tell us a bit more about my observation
yeah,
of your work in that respect?
yeah. As you said before, my radio show started with In the Mix, and then added to that became a second part called the mini mix. The mini mix was initially, yeah, you think I'm going way off track now, but bear with me. The mini mix was just a short version of In the Mix, but the mini mix concentrated into a 7 minute span where I would take on a track, anything. And here comes the explanation to the answer to your question, the explanation and the how and when. When you're doing a mini mix for radio, and do remember that the mini mixes I make, most of the mini mixes are intended to be played on radio once. So I work all day from morning till evening, and that's including the remix I did for Phil Collins in the Air Tonight, was intended to be made as 7 minutes of entertainment on radio. That's it. That it became a big hit, and now I've got a silver disc hanging on my wall. That came all afterwards, but 7 minutes of entertainment on the radio. So if I'm making a mini mix, it is absolutely no use spending an hour and a half on a shaker, which might be on the left channel at minus 20 dBs for 16 seconds. It's no use. So I'm very aware of the fact that when I'm making a mini mix, and this mini mix is probably going to be heard by the majority of people just once, that every minute of work I put into that should translate into something you hear in the end. So you become very economic in that way, and you become very aware of that you should prioritize stuff, and you shouldn't be mucking about with stuff that doesn't come across. You should concentrate on the stuff that makes sense. You should clear out of the way anything that gets in the way of all the stuff that needs to make sense. And if there is a obviously very costly horn section in there, but it doesn't work, or it just works for a couple of notes, then you should cherry pick what works and discard what doesn't. And another thing is, for the mini mix, it's something that I start on in the morning and it needs to be finished in the evening. Back then, because in the evening, 8 o'clock would be my cutoff deadline, I would have to have my tape ready at 8 o'clock, fling it in the box, jump in the car, drive 100 kilometers to the studio, and then it would be played live on air. So it was an absolute hard deadline. Even now, when I do the mini mix, at the end of the day, it needs to be done because it will be broadcast, the next morning, for example. And the deadline is also something which is very energizing to get it done. It's very important, that deadline, to not muck about with stuff which isn't important. And that pressure of the deadline and that knowledge of that you shouldn't spend time on stuff which nobody hears, um, is the first answer to your question. Why there is stuff, why there is only stuff in there that does what it needs to do and nothing else. And the other thing is that, being a DJ myself, I have my preference of how a track should run. So what kind of intro it should have, and how I'd like my breaks to be able to blend perfectly into the next track. So that's another part of formatting. And with the formatting way from back, when I did the first adding rhythms to other tracks, that it needs to make sense, that stuff needs to happen in expected moments, because if I would fling in an extra 2 beats or an extra bar and a half, you'd get so confused what's going on, and you'd have the feeling that this bit of music, a part of it hopefully being good, is hopefully also a great tool in your DJ set. And everything that gets in the way of that, I try to eliminate. There are even grand mixes where in the original version a bass line starts on a odd moment, not on the moment where you expect it to start. I will have re-edited that track in a grand mix that it runs by the way I feel it should run by. For example, Clean Up the Ghetto. That track has such an odd bass line, which just doesn't feel that it is starting on where you feel that it should start. It would annoy the hell out of me. Also, for example, War Galaxy. That track has claps that flip around for big parts of the track, where the clap is on the 1 on the 3 instead of on the 2 and the 4. Where I'm like, why? Anyways,
It's rude, Ben. It's rude. It's rude. They obviously didn't have you in mind.
Why would you want to annoy Ben? So, and that again ties into when you're doing a remix or a production, that you are eliminating all the stuff that annoys you. So obviously, when another track comes out and there is stuff in there which annoys you, that bit of me being on the spectrum just can't get past that.
So Ben, just moving over to another major part of your life, the Grand 12-inch series, which has been running for many, many years now. So we're talking about Ben, the audio restoration, licensing individual here. So what was the catalyst to launch the Grand 12-inch series, and some of the difficulties involved in sourcing, licensing and restorations of the master tapes recordings? And also, was and is Sony always involved?
Yes, the thing it sparked was the following. I was working, I think it was on the Grandmix Disco Edition 2. What happened then is that instead of the 12-inch version, which I requested, I got sent a 1 minute 45-second snippet, which at the end you'd hear the next song being blended in. And I was like, what the hell is going on? How can the person responsible for sending me a master send me a 1 minute 45 snippet, which happened to come from my own Grandmix? So then it kind of turned out that yes. Then it turned out that the girl who was asked to send me the master, and it was Robert Palmer, you're in my system, which was asked to send me the master of the 12-inch version, didn't have a clue whatsoever, probably what a master is of a record. So she just went through some CDs, and the first occurrence she found of Robert Palmer, You're in My System, she ripped from a CD, which happened to be my own Grandmix CD, which resulted in a snippet with not a proper beginning and not a proper end, because it was just apart from a continuous mix, and send it out. And then I actually got in a bit of an argument with the record company at that time, saying that, if people nowadays are still willing to pay for a proper version of a song they love, if they're still, they're not ripping it, they're not stealing it, they're not whatever, downloading it from the internet, they're actually willing to pay for a proper version. It's just disgraceful that that proper version cannot be supplied because there aren't any people at the record company anymore that know where the master is. There are a whole bunch of record companies that have discarded, as in thrown in the bin, uh, dumped in a dumpster their tape collection,
Crazy.
which is just crazy. And that kind of sparked my quest is a big word, but my eagerness to preserve the 12 inch versions I love. And I got together with Sony and explained, my, my grievances, and suggested that we should make a series which tries to preserve uh, the 12-inch versions, which I consider grand, therefore grand 12 inches, which, really 12 inches versions that stand out. And obviously, you're talking about the original Donna Summer, the Patrick Cowley Donna Summer, beautiful tracks by Harry Thuman, Gino Socio, all the stuff that really got me going in the music business. And that became a real expedition to find these masters. As I said, really, a lot of record companies just dumped their tape libraries, and so that was the start of Grand 12 inches. And we had a whole bunch of years incredibly difficult and also very costly to get these masters. Because don't forget, if you're a record company, and some record companies you can't even blame, because here's the situation. You're a record company, Ben Liebrand comes and asks you for a particular master, and it's one out of 40 tracks on a compilation CD. So whatever this thing will earn 1/40th part of that compilation because you've only one track on there. So they very rightfully noticed then that sending someone to the archives will already leave them at a disadvantage. So as soon as they have to send someone in the archives, it will already cost so much that it's not even worth to draw up the paperwork anymore. So you get in a catch-22 situation there. And luckily, over the last years, I've also have a huge network of people that love the Grand 12 inches series, and which help me. And they send me whatever master they have themselves in uncompressed wave quality. And your first idea would be like, haha, hey, that's easy. So Ben needs a track for Grand 12 inches, and he just asks somebody to send him the track for Grand 12 inches, and then he sticks it on Grand 12 inches. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. The way it does work is that I have my master. I might have a master from the record company, which might be transferred from a way too old tape, so it doesn't have the clarity anymore which it should have. And then somebody might be there that has a Japanese pressing of a mastering from the original tapes onto digital by someone who had a great weekend and did a fantastic job. And then I start comparing up to 50 versions of this master, and it turns out that that Japanese master that sounds even better than the tape transfer I got from the record company, because that transfer might have been made from a tape back then when it was still fresh, and it might even be that a 16-bit transfer made way back when the tape was fresh sounds better than a 96 kilohertz 24-bit transfer made today. So live and learn,
Yeah.
and that is how I select, compare A B until I get the best versions on Grand 12 inches. And again, here kicks in my little bit of being on the spectrum, that when I hear an edit in there where you can clearly hear that all the reverb and all the whatever's going on just prior to that point is just cut away,
Mm.
then I'll take a couple of moments and I'll recreate the reverb that was cut away by the hard tape edit back in the day.
Wow.
And then it goes from sounding perfect with an almost perfect edit to sounding perfect with a perfect edit. and repair it that way. My version of I Feel Love doesn't have the little jump in rhythm. The original version has, when it comes into the break, it has the couple of loops where it goes all through the chords and then it stays on the C chord. And on that moment, there's just a little bit too much time. So if you try to mix it out there, you'll suddenly jump out of sync because there is just a little bit too much tape there. And
Wow.
then something I noticed with my 12-inch version. So when it came out on Grand 12 inches, I made sure that I aligned it with some clean beats there to make sure that that edit is now perfect. And it's this little things which, if I've done my work right, nobody will hear.
Well, it's such beautiful attention to detail, Ben. I applaud you and very much subscribe to that philosophy. I mean, you talk about having maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 submissions of a track on your desk, looking at them and hearing them. Is it a combination of your ears and visual technology? How do you make that decision, Ben? Is it just gut feeling, ears telling you this is the one?
It is a comparison. So, for example, you can see by the waveform if a track has really been pumped up till 0 dB digital. So you can see if the track has been grossly overprocessed. So those tracks are discarded first of all, and then you go through tracks, and the tracks are being played in different ways on different speakers, and so then I start comparing, and I do a check if it came from an MP3, because there are artifacts which you can hear. If you play it in a certain way, those artifacts will become clearer, and that track will get tossed out, and then you're down to 8 tracks, and then you start A-Bing, and you're like, okay, this one sounds distorted in the high end. That one sounds better, and then go further. And it might even be that you end up with a track that needs some low end, that clearly has too little of a low end. Um, the final verdict is how easy, how fluently, how effortlessly this track performs, and how effortlessly all the things run by, how effortlessly the high end sounds without becoming harsh, without becoming distorted or whatever. And if it comes by effortlessly, then that is the one I will take, and I'll bring it up to level, but I'll do it in such a way that um, sacrificing like 4 or 5 peaks throughout the track will enable me to lift the entire volume of the track by a couple of dBs. So I'll bring it up to level, but I won't be doing that in a way where I'm actually processing the track sound wise, but I'll just be looking at those couple of peaks in a 7-minute track that are keeping the track from being a couple of dBs higher, and bringing that up to level. And over time, also devised a way of uh, getting a proper hold of the low end in such a way where, um, funny enough, on your spectrum analyzer, it would look like there is less low, but it comes across more as more or better low, or a low end in the spot of your frequency where it does its job, if you know what I mean. So there might be low end in a track which has so much energy going on at such a low frequency that it gets in the way of the track performing. And then I'll have my way of applying filters where I get rid of that energy absorbing low end, which you're not going to hear anyway, and kind of move the audible part of the low end into a frequency range where it exactly does what it needs to be doing. And yes, those little things. And
Mm.
again, correcting all the things that are not perfect yet.
From a fellow nerd point of view as well, Ben, for the Grandmix series, are you mastering in the hardware domain, the analog domain or the outboard domain, or are you mastering in software these days?
I'm working in software, and again, that has everything to do with being able to work on the Grandmix, closing that project, doing because if I'm working on the Grandmix, it usually takes me so long that in between working on the Grandmix, I also have to finish my in the house mixes, the in the mix episodes, and the mini mixes. So I have to be able to confidently save and close a project. And when I open the project, I have to have 100% confidence that I continue right from where I was, and that no outboard settings are changed. And the other thing is that when you're working in digital, I've tried outboard compressor limiters, but still I cannot be absolutely sure that they are not mucking about with just the point where they are becoming active. And I bought hardware to do that in the beginning, working on the Grand Mixes, and it turned out that right at the point between it's not doing anything yet and now it's doing something, click sounds, tick sounds, some artifacts appeared, and I'm like, yeah, that's no use. Now I still can't be sure that I am not having overloads, and I still can't be sure that preventing these overloads won't introduce other artifacts. So then you start searching for other means to do that, and I found those means to accomplish that. And also, with the experience I have of doing all the Grand 12 inches masters, I'm also applying that experience to colleagues that have recent hits, and hits I mean number one positions in Traxsource and Beatport, which were their tracks mastered by Ben Liebrand.
Fantastic. Moving on to the Grandmix subject again, Ben. Going back to 1993, what was it in 93 that halted the broadcast, release, or even construction of a Grandmix for that year, Ben?
Well, one of the things was, as I told you earlier, that making these grand mixes and not having any feedback at all. And the only feedback I basically had for the last couple of years is that, you can use some expletives for that. Some not so kind people were bootlegging them and were putting them out, which put me in a really odd situation. First of all, I wasn't the guy that was putting them out, but I was regarded as the guy that was putting them out. So many people were, giving me a little bit of a snigger when I told them, like, it's not me that's putting out these bootlegs. Then the record stores where I would buy my records would obviously tell anybody and everybody, oh, Ben Liebrand buys his records here. Then it came to the point, like, can you tell me who's actually selling you these bootlegs? Where are they coming from? No, we can't tell you that. It's like, what the hell is going on? You are advertising with the fact that I'm buying all my records amongst you, your record stores, and then when I ask you, help me out, who is doing this to me? So it became a sour experience that whenever I put out a grand mix, that other people were taking it and making money on it, and a bunches of people thought that I was behind the whole thing, whilst I wasn't, and there was no way of convincing them, because all I would get was a silly snigger back. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So it became a sour thing at the end, and that plus the fact that I was by myself in the studio with a technician, which was also not really interested what was going on. The anticlimax thing was a thing that in 1992 I told myself, like, okay, this is it. I made 10 from 83 till 92. It's done.
So this kind of segues into the next question, I think, actually, Ben. Staying in this year, what was was this the catalyst that circa 1993 that made you switch your focus to computer graphics and 3D animation? And later, what brought you back to music again from this kind of sour experience, which I'm guessing relates to the previous topic?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so were a couple of things. Another thing also is that 1993, there were also a whole bunch of records by, I won't name names, for example, Captain Jack. And I'm like, I can't make this. Even if I make this, I can't have a satisfied feeling about this because this is cartoon disco. I don't know. So the music was going in a particular direction where I felt like, I don't know. And looking back, on actually all the tracks of the year 1993, still a lot of stuff were fantastic tracks. But 1993 was also the year where I think 1993 was the year where I had my "Let's Talk About Sex," the huge global hit of my remix of "Let's Talk About Sex" by Salt and Pepper. And up to that point, I was just making my 12-inch versions, which I loved. That's my main focus, making the 12-inch versions for the dance floor. And it became important to also make, obviously, a 7-inch edit, which I really didn't care about. It was an evil necessity to also make the radio edit. But from Salt and Pepper on, suddenly all my colleagues got to play around and muck around and experiment with all the beautiful 12-inch versions, as long as Ben Liebrand made the radio edit, which actually sold. So that was also a thing that kind of soured it for me, because then, my creativity got very much restricted, and all my colleagues were getting, the beautiful 12-inch. They could do whatever they want, and it didn't matter if it didn't sell anything. These 12-inch versions, as long as Ben made a radio version that actually paid for all the bills. And yeah, I was so busy at that time with computer graphics that everything shifted to graphics, and I got out of music for a couple of years. And during that time, I came across a group on the internet that kind of gathered everybody that loved the mixes and loved the Grandmixes.
Hmm.
And for me, I kind of closed that whole chapter in my book. But I discovered that that chapter was very much open. Also, because at that time, you're talking about, I don't know, 1994, 95, 96, around about that time. That was also the time, obviously, where this kind of feedback became possible through the internet. And that kind of incentivized me to maybe consider a Grandmix again. And I contacted Sony, and we looked into a format, because the Grandmix, the releases on the Sony, they are a 3-hour format, and the 3-hour format divided over 3 CDs, and that has to do with your, I think it's called PPL in the UK, Buma Stemra in the Netherlands. It has to do with the amount of tracks that may be on one CD. So funny enough, you can have 100 over 3 CDs, but you can't have more than 44 different songs on one CD.
Okay.
So if you want to have 100 on one CD, like a
Hmm.
traditional 1 hour grand mix, your PPL or whatever it's called jumps up and becomes so much that it's not affordable anymore to make a grand mix. So that determined the fact that the grand mix is a 3 CD thing, 3 hours. And to kind of start it off, to kind of try it out, we made the Millennium Mix, covering like the last 10 years of the millennium. We did that in 1999, and that went down so well that in 2000 I restarted with the annual year grand mixes as well.
At that point, Ben, had you got over your feeling that the music was very much DIY, low quality? You felt that it was, you wanted to make music for the audience and the
yeah.
scene?
And one of the things that people don't realize, and that also goes for a Grandmix. A Grandmix obviously is looking back at a year, and there are some Grandmixes that are people favorites, and there are some Grandmixes which are not their people favorites. But it is like in wine; it's what the yield is of the year if you can make a proper bottle of wine out of it. And so that also plays a big role. And by 1999, certainly by 2000, you already had the first new disco tracks. Basically disco tracks, but in the 2000s version, a bit of a natural evaluation of what disco would be, and that resulted in a whole bunch of tracks, which again grabbed my attention and got me interested in being involved in music again and being involved in mixing and grand mixing again. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so that's what happened in 2000. And Millennium Grand Mix did very well. 2000 went very well. Then we decided to do a disco edition. We decided to do a second disco edition. And in between these annual Grand Mixes, we also did summer editions and Disco Nouveau and all these extra editions in between. And the Grand Mix format became a very well, you know, performing release.
Fantastic. And what's great for the not only the Mastermix audience, but of course your global fan base for many years, is that you've completed Grandmix 93 and it's going to be available on Mastermix very soon. So this is something incredibly exciting for everybody,
Yeah.
that missing
Well,
element from the history, you know?
well, it's something that we are now mentioning kind of in our conversation, but a lot of people hearing this interview for the first time obviously did not expect that. But yes, indeed, we took great effort to make it possible that the Grandmix 93 will be released on Mastermix, which I, by the way, didn't know at the time when I was making it. Because at the time I was making it, we'd actually planned to do a rerun of the Grandmix 1983. And I had kind of booked the whole month of December off, planning to do nothing but, go Christmas shopping. And then I told my Brenda it would be a fantastic stunt if we announce Grandmix 1983 is going to have a rerun at the traditional time at the end of the year. In fact, this time it was on the 30th, not on the 31st. It would be a fantastic stunt if I would tell nobody and would just make a Grandmix 1993 because there's never been one. So I just got started on it, and it started to come together fairly fast, fairly smoothly, fairly quickly. And obviously, with also the techniques, all the technology you have today, gives you so many more possibilities of making a certain transition, where on vinyl you would not be able to make such a transition. And it came together so fluently. Yeah, then recently we got in contact, and I'm so stoked about having the possibility of releasing the Grand Mix 93 to the audience.
As are we, as am I. I mean, hey everybody, I've heard it. I've had the preview. In fact, I did a car journey over the Easter weekend and smashed it full volume all the way there. The other occupant of the car was dancing in her seat for about an hour or so. It was
Good.
incredible. So get excited, everybody. Here comes Grand Mix 93. It's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, Ben. So let's sidestep once more and talk about Ben Liebrand, the solo artist. Two albums, 1990s Styles, of course, and the second, which was 2017's Iconic Groove. So, what was the state of mind difference between the two, plus the methods and the approach to recording? Because I believe that on 2017's album, you reverted back to some more old school techniques for recording, and also maybe as a side note, maybe some quick memories of the Iconic Grooves guest artist collaboration experience.
Yeah. So what happened in back in at the time of Styles was that I was having a whole string of hits for Sony at that time, CBS it was back then, and they said we'd like to put together a compilation album of remixes you've done. I just had the I think a number 4 position with Eve of the War in the UK, and make a best of a Ben Liebrand compilation. And then I suggested, well, I'll do you better one better than that. Why not make a Ben Liebrand album with Ben Liebrand productions and produced and mixed by Ben Liebrand. And CBS went along with that. So that was back then, and a whole bunch of years later. Also, it's a lovely story. So imagine this. I had booked. We were already living in Canada, and I had booked a week in the Netherlands. And this week, I had the first weekend a bunch of gigs, and the second weekend a bunch of gigs. And actually, it was quite sad because round about that time was the Amsterdam Dance event. I don't know how I managed that, but I really didn't realize exactly the dates I was going. And one of the things I had on my schedule was I was going by Armin van Buren, a great friend of mine, and he's a really fantastic guy. I mean, I wish everybody in the music business would be like Armin. It would be a much, 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 much better business. Anyways, coffee at Armin's. That was on the schedule. So I arrive at Armin on I don't know on a Tuesday, and we're having coffee, and it came to the point where Armin kind of said that he has to keep an eye on the clock because he needs to be in Amsterdam for the Amsterdam Dance Event panel he was in, and I'm like, say what? And he said, yeah, and the Amsterdam Dance Event is starting, and I was like, the Amsterdam Dance Event was last week, wasn't it? Said, no, it's this week. So, oh shite, I would have loved to go. And Armin says, give me a moment. He picks up the phone. Yes, Armin here. Yes, I'm on the panel at 12:30. I've got Ben Liebrand here with me, and the panel is about mix shows and how they are distributed internationally. And this guy's been in mix shows decades before me, so I think it would be interesting to have. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yes, we'll be there. So
like
from in a minute and a half later, I was destined to go to Amsterdam Dance Event, and not only be an Amsterdam Dance Event, but being on one of the panels, one of the the speakers on one of the panels, and actually having something to say about the subject as well. So, but as I hadn't had planned anything else for the week, suddenly now I was on the Amsterdam Dance Event. I could stay at Armin's place. That's covered. And as I hadn't planned anything else, I just kind of went through Amsterdam Dance Event with Armin, which was nice for Armin as well, because whenever there was nothing going on, we were chatting about all the stuff, the studio stuff, productions, and God knows what. I mean, we're friends. We can spend complete evenings and not even music comes up as a topic. So fantastic. Very nice for Armin as well, I'm hoping. And what I noticed then is that I came across colleagues, guys from the UK, guys I know, and I'm standing there, and they know Armin. Everybody knows what Armin looks like, and so they're talking to Armin, and then Armin says, this is Ben Liebrand. And they turn around and they're like, you're Ben Liebrand? I say, yeah, I'm Ben Liebrand. And taking both of my hands, thank you so much. And I've listened to so many mixes of yours. And I'm like, I didn't even know that the guy knew my name. And that week went on like that all the time. And I met so many people where I didn't even realize that they knew who Ben Liebrand was. And then I thought, this is cool. This is really cool. And I was in TV shows and all kinds of things, nothing planned. And it just went the way it went. and it was an amazing week and kind of a revelation. And then it was like, I think I'm going to do an album, and I think I'm going to do an album. Um, I want to do an album that thrills me in the same way as the first time I played the Change album with Lover's Holiday and Searching and all those tracks. And I could remember how I felt and really the state of mind I had having that album, taking it out of the cover, playing it for the first time. And I thought, I want to make an album that invokes that same feeling, that same state of mind. And that's how Iconic Groove got started. And the title refers to what is an iconic groove? Iconic, the bass line in Another One Bites the Dust, Chic, Good Times, Donna Summer, I Feel Love. Those are all iconic grooves. And I thought,
Great.
how cool would it be if I could make maybe a bunch of new iconic grooves? And had a collaboration with Marcel Schimschheimer and Jochem Fluitsma in the Netherlands. One of the best bass players, one of the best guitar players I know. And we sat down and we talked about feelings. We talked about our feelings. No, we didn't talk like that. We talked about the feeling you get with certain iconic tracks, and I would name a couple of iconic tracks, and to kind of get the mood. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then we decided on a key, we decided on a tempo, we put down a basic click track, and we laid down whatever felt best at the time. And each and every track, I basically recorded, say, 32 bars of music, which isn't that much, which is about a minute. But in that minute, I would have a section for a verse, a section for a bridge, a section for a chorus, and another section for whatever extra. And we recorded a bunch of these basics, laying down the bass line, the guitar, some chords. And then I took those back as if they were a remix and started building them into songs, coming up with lyrics. And that's how Iconic Groove came to be.
What
Heavily inspired.
what a clever place to start, Ben, because usually it's a blank canvas and you're just looking at a flashing a cursor and you're going, I don't know. But to have that as a concept and just get some, right, we need some classic bass, like we need new iconic bass lines, and then you take that as a foundation, you go away and you assemble what you're inspired by.
Yeah, yeah. And
Awesome.
exactly that. If you have a fantastic bass player in your vicinity, and may I also advertise now my son Sasha. He has done he is a bachelor in double bass and bass. You can even ask Sasha. Sasha at Liebrand.com. Send him an email, and I'd like to have a bass line, and that bass line then can, that bass line will determine what kind of feel the track has.
Yeah.
That will also by what kind of rhythm guitar the track has. And in the one occasion we started with rhythm guitar, other occasion we started with the bass line, and that's how the basic parts of these tracks came to be. And the beauty of the thing is that suddenly then you have sound samples which you can use, and they're played by fantastic musicians, so there's so much life in there, there's so much going on, so much detail, so much fantastic stuff bubbling out of that. So that was the basics of that track. And I sent a track to James D. Train Williams and asked him if he would be interested on that track. And being a big fan of his, and being a big fan of You're the One for Me, and all the other stuff he's done back then. Just imagine, here's this guy from the Netherlands, and he gave James D. Train Williams a call and sent him this groove with an idea like, I'd like to have a track about the weekend and about everything that goes in the weekend, and that is your relief from your week's work. And could you do something? And then he calls me back. I hear my track running in the background, and I'm like, shit, man, this is James D. Train Williams. He's playing my track. And then he goes, who, he does the first ad lib in the beginning, and he starts doing the vocals. And hey Ben, my man, what do you think, man? What do you think? He said, well, you had me at woohoo. I was sold at woohoo. Yeah,
That was it. Done deal. Yeah, yeah, excellent.
yeah,
And Barbara Tucker as well, Ben.
yeah. Barbara Tucker as well, and
Mm.
also two Dutch female vocalists on two of the tracks. And then it slowly came together, and there's even a track there called On and On. And I was driving back from Sasha in Edmonton, which is a long stretch road back to Calgary back then. And I had Linda, my daughter, with me. And I said, I have a funny idea about a computer talking about itself performing. So here's a computer being aware that it's performing music and talking about itself performing this music. And as I was coming up with lines, she just took her phone and typed in whatever I was saying, and that became the track On and On. And about a computer talking about being a computer making music. And so all those tracks came together. And there's also a very nice liner inside the album explaining this whole story, how this came to be, this unexpected meeting with Armin, where a cup of coffee turned into being on the speakers panel at Amsterdam Dance Event, and how this completely unexpectedly unfolded. And talking about folded, was actually one of them is Paul Oakenfold, which I met in Amsterdam. That was the guy who grabbed my hand and said, Ben Liebrand, so nice to meet you. And I'm like, man, I didn't realize you knew who I was. And I think, again, it was a bit of me realizing how other people regard Ben Liebrand. Me realizing that, and the fact that I realized that has obviously much to do that I love to be in my bubble, and I love to do what I do and not be distracted by a lot of other stuff. And then obviously also things like that, things like other people noticing me, totally passes me by, because Ben Liebrand is in his bubble making music.
It's a wonderfully humbling experience, I would imagine, for you, Ben, but very warming and beautiful that was the catalyst for
Yeah.
Iconic Groove, isn't it? But
Yes.
if again, slightly sidestepping, but keeping on the subjects of grooves and one of the best things that you do best, your productions always maintain a signature, very solid low end in the bass and the groove area. But what have been your favoured rhythm machines and bass synthesizers and software hardware solutions over the past, say, 30 years, in that
Oh, yeah.
journey you've had, Ben?
Well, first of all, talking about the nice low end, as in artwork, I also love to do artwork. And as in artwork, I feel that artwork needs to have a certain richness, a certain fullness, a certain richness, a certain, I don't know, exhuming luxury, call it that. And I feel that a track should have that same warmth, that same richness, which obviously comes from the low end. If you have a track that doesn't have a proper low end, then also that warmth isn't there. So first of all, that's something which is very important to me, and I strive to get that. And with regards to using drum machines, back in the day it was the first Lin, then the Lin drum, the second iteration of the Lin drum. And back then, it also took quite some fiddling about to get that richness, and quite some EQing to get that richness. And after that, I worked extensively, did a lot of productions with the MPC 60 of Akai, which was actually a 12-bit drum computer. And part of the fullness comes from that 12-bit drum computer, because it has a particular sound, and it has a particular, because it is only as 12 bits, so it's actually not even that hi-fi, but it results in that the sounds you get from an MPC60, they are very present in the frequency range where it matters. So you're not talking about a 24-bit 96 kilohertz sample, which has all the beautiful, nice harmonics. No, you're talking about the in-your-face drum, bass drum, the in-your-face snare, the in-your-face clap, and everything is there. It's very present. So it actually really fulfills whatever it needs to be doing in a track. And in I don't even remember what year it was, but it was in a time when PWL was already pretty successful, and I asked if I could visit them, and Pete Waterman thought it was great because they have their hit factory set up, and here's this puppy, this dude, this guy, this boy from the Netherlands. And this boy from the Netherlands is doing his own little PWL thing from what basically is his bedroom. And Pete Waterman thought it was great. So I always had a fantastic relationship with Pete and the rest of the team, and being a nerd also with Ian Kernow, who was the guy who made the sounds for PWL. He's done a lots more, but part of his job was also just to make sounds, to program bass sounds, to program all kinds of sounds that the guys, he was in the little studio a level down, that the guys a level higher, literally, I don't know, anyways, physically a level higher, would then use in all the productions. And this again was a nerd talking to a nerd. And I also got a whole set of sounds from Ian Kernow. Um, he
Nice.
made me promise that I'm giving you these sounds, and these sounds stay with you. And I'm very much a person that believes that a promise shouldn't have a expiry date. So up till this date now, I've got the TX 802 in my rack with the cartridge with Pete's bass sounds, and that's where they are, and that's where they will remain. And
Insanely.
that was also part of being able to make those beautiful bass sounds
Mm.
together with the mini moog, and also the mini moog. I have an original mini moog, uh, actually
Still,
mini
Ben?
moog,
You
I
still
should
have it?
say.
You still
Yeah,
have it?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Mini moog, I should actually pronounce. Sorry for that. And that also has that same richness for the nerd guys amongst us that have been experimenting with these classic synthesizers. There's also something. There's also the ARP 2600, which can make great sounds, but it doesn't have that warmth in the low end. It just doesn't. I mean, I've not been able to get it from there. It has low end, but it doesn't have that rich, warm, luxurious sounding low end, which the Mini Moog has.
Mm.
And yeah, those were kind of the things of choice. And nowadays, with the experience I have now, I know what the frequencies are, where your bass drum should be, where your bass should be. Back in the day, you would program a bass drum which has a low end and a bass line which is a little bit higher, so they don't interfere with each other. But nowadays, you can just tell your bass drum whenever the bass drum is going on that it kind of dims the bass line or dims the low end in the bass drum so it doesn't interfere. So much more is possible these days. Um, and I'm now working, been working in Ableton for over 20 years now, and that's my Swiss Army knife. Anything that I need to make, I can make in Ableton, and I can make it work exactly and perform exactly how I want it to perform.
Mm.
So that's now my go-to software.
Mm. Oh, well, another question where I can just slide this one in here is your preferred DAW, Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools. I think you just answered that question.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. I did record Iconic Groove in Logic, and Logic is also, it's such a vast, um, a vast collection of possibilities and sounds and synthesizers and samples, which just comes with Logic. If you just get Logic on your machine, you're set to go. You can make anything you want because it has the whole shebang. It has all the strings. It has all the stuff you need, pianos, God knows what. So where Logic is more, even more maybe the musician's choice, then Ableton is more the Swiss Army knife. I just have to get this done, getting to from A to B the fastest way, cutting across the lawn, getting to results. Then yes, it's Ableton for me. And also, I'm very much a believer in. I love cutting edge technology, but I love the cutting edge technology that works. So I'm not somebody who buys 1,500 different plugins just to have them and just to get lost between all the possibilities. No, I'm someone that is like, in order to make this work, I need this, I need that, I need that. And I very much believe in that. If you can't cook a proper meal on a little two burner butane
Yeah.
thingamajiggy, and you also can't cook a proper meal in
Yeah.
a vast kitchen.
But this
So
is like what we were discussing earlier, Ben, with those essential elements in your remix, etc. You know, why have 150 plugins when you know that five of them work how you want them to? You know.
and you're better off completely understanding and knowing 10 plugins than having 1,000. And
Amen.
yeah, and it goes for so much stuff. I mean, also there is, for example, there's a basic reverb in Ableton, and there are better reverbs out there, but I've gotten to know this reverb so well that I can basically do whatever needs to be done with just the basic reverb, which is in Ableton. And there might be, I don't know, maybe one or two occasions per year where I would look for something else if it's really something odd, really something specific. But yeah, if you have those couple of plugins and you really know them, and the same goes for sounds, it is absolutely no use having 100 gigabytes of samples if you don't know your sounds. If you don't know, I need this, and in order to find this, if you have to
Hmm.
spend a day and a half going through 100 gigabytes of sounds, then it doesn't work. So you better have a compact collection of stuff which you know that works and which you can get to very fast to work efficiently. And that's also a way to avoid uh, getting lost in possibilities, because
Mm,
it's fantastic having a million possibilities, but if at the end of the day it doesn't lead to anything, then it's of no use.
indeed. Amen to that. Ben, in very shortly, you have your Disco 250 event coming up, I believe. And on the DJing side of Ben Liebrand in 2024, for your live DJ gigs, what is the technical and creative preparation involved, both audio and visual, for such gigs? And plus, what do you strive to deliver as the audience experience for those attending?
Right. For Disco 250, the way I spin music, I've actually introduced the first CDJ thousands for Pioneer in Europe. I was the guy that was asked to introduce this at the first presentation they had in Europe. So I've been working with them since uh, the first CDJ 1000, first with CDs, now with the digital. And for being a DJ for so many years, and having bought the original vinyl copies of Good Times and all those hits, having bought them myself, having bought the Menergy by Patrick Cowley, um, Change, Lover's Holiday, the album. Um, I have had these records since then, so you can imagine that if you are kind of, in my case, I have kind of specialized profiled myself in disco and that era from late 70s to early 90s. I can play the whole shebang from anything from back then till now, but that is where my love is. But if you have known these records for so long, that at a certain point you're like, okay, I want to play that track, but I only want to play the first verse, and I want to play the first bridge and the first verse. Sorry, uh, yeah, verse, bridge, chorus, and then I want to get into the break. So I make a shorter edit of the original track, but I don't add bass drums. I don't add rhythms. It's the original mixes as they appeared back then. And so I make the mixes, and then I'm like, okay, I love this track. It has a 4-bar break, which isn't enough. Then I'll extend the break so I have more break to work with. So I come up with my versions of these tracks, which still have the original sound. And being, having played these tracks so many times, I want to keep it interesting for myself as well. So rather than just making a cross from one track to the other, I'm like, okay, I'm in the key of E. I'm going from this track to that track. How about in that 8-bar transition or 16-bar transition, I find some other a cappella which will match the key, which will match the energy, which will match the groove, and I'll mixing the acapella. And the moment I'm mixing the acapella, I'll also be starting the next track. So whilst this acapella is running, I'll be making a transition from the music from one to the other. So have 3 tracks going on, and in certain occasions I'll have, this might be a little bit empty, I'll have the chords from a 4th track on the last player, which will also kind of build that whole transition. And I've been using the CDJ since 2001. First couple of years in combination with vinyl, so 2 vinyl players, 2 SL1200s and 2 CDJ 1000s. And then at a certain point, I went completely over to CDJ 1000, so completely digital. So I've been working this way and starting acapellas whenever they needed to be started, be it on the 1, be it on the upbeat for the 1, be it 3/16 before the 1, be it 6/16, 7/16 before the 1. So very odd places to start the acapella. That meant that a thing like autosync would probably mess me up, because the autosync then maybe doesn't know, does he intend to have that thing start on the clap or on the next beat, or what's going on here? So as I had already kind of mastered that way of mixing without using sync, I'm still not using sync, because I'd rather make a live correction than have an a cappella which doesn't start where it's supposed to start.
One
Because
question for the gigs, if I may, Ben, is do you lock the original classic tracks to a static tempo as well, or do you leave
yes,
them to free?
yeah. For example, I have the best example is probably a Car Wash by Rolls Royce. My version I play is 120 BPM. The original goes from about 112, 113, builds up to a little bit over 121. And I'm like, I love this track so much, I cannot play this track, because although you might be able to mix it in, then suddenly within your set, you jump from 112 to 121. What am I going to do with all the stuff I want to play in between? So I make sure that they're steady. And the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours I've made in doing episodes of In the Mix, I've gotten so fast in syncing things up that that's no problem anymore. So I do make sure that they're steady, but that's it. So I don't want to, if you're making a transition from track A to track B, and in that transition you have an a cappella from track C and some chords from track D, you don't want to have these tracks also with additional bass drums or rhythms or whatever, because then it's just getting too much. And it's also, I feel that anyone that has the opportunity to listen to a set of mine, nobody nobody ever came to me and said like, "Hey Ben, I missed an extra bass drum." You don't need the extra bass drum there, because within the original mix, everything's there what's supposed to be there. Even if it needs a little bit of low end, I have the experience from Grand 12 inches, and I'm able to emphasize the low end in such a way that it performs the way it should perform. So
Yeah.
doing the mixes, I make sure that my mixes themselves are steady. I make sure that Recordbox knows those tempos, that I can quickly set a tempo, because that is accurate. So I set the tempos visually by BPM, in a tenth of a BPM. Same goes for the acapellas, which saves me a lot of time. And when I do the Disco 250 set, that will be 250 tracks mixed live in a set of a little over 5 hours. And I just set myself that challenge, see if I can do that, which means that it is a very energetic set with it just goes on and on. And I, for myself, have found a beautiful balance between utter nerdiness, making sure that all this technical stuff is right, making sure that I fly in this a cappella at the right tempo and at the right volume, and if need be with the right EQ, doing it in such a smooth way that it sounds like, I invite anybody and everybody to look over my shoulder to see that it's actually live what I'm doing. But if you listen back to the recording, so if you listen back to if I would record it, if you would listen back to that, or if you're in the room, it sounds absolutely smooth. And that smoothness is essential, because that means that all my technical tomfoolery, all my technical nerdiness doesn't get in the way of you loving the tracks you love and dancing your ass off on the dance floor. And all the mixing goes in such a fluent way that it doesn't mess up with your experience. So that means that 95% of the people on my dance floor who don't know what a BPM is, who don't know what a grid is,
Don't
they are
care.
not annoyed with
Yeah.
all the shit I'm pulling off.
Yeah.
And for example, if I play a track like JD Plastic Dreams, and I decide I want to have the loop of Donna Summer's "I Feel Love" coming in and out and filtering, doing all the filtering stuff and that, then that is one of the elements going on, and it's going on so smoothly it could be in the original mix, but it won't interfere with you experiencing the evening. And it's also not, hey, look at me keeping two tracks in sync for nobody cares about that. If you can keep two tracks in sync for a minute and a half, and if they're off key, the only thing you'll accomplish is people curling their toes in pure. What the hell is going
Yeah.
on?
When is so you can let people know who are watching this, Ben, assuming they're not looking at it after the gig.
Yeah,
When is the gig and whereabouts?
it's the 20th of April, and it's in Utrecht. And to get some information, it's Disco 250. So Disco 250, disco250.com. And that's the spot where you will see where it is, and if you want to get tickets. And I've had colleagues come from Scandinavia, from all over the place, to see that. And the cool thing is that even friends of mine, even if an Armin van Buren comes there, and Armin doesn't play disco, but still, after a night like that, he'll go home and he'll be inspired.
I would find it a detox, like a refreshing. Oh gosh, I haven't experienced
Yeah.
this in 30 years. 40 years since the original days of disco. So I would. Yes, I'm going to have a look at
And
that day.
what you say, the original days of disco, the response of the people is that this comes as close as you can imagine to not only experiencing those original days of disco, but feeling the way you felt in those
Oh,
original days of disco. So, and I think that recreating that state of mind, we got that down. we got that down because the music is spot on, and the music also obviously weaves from stuff that you really know. But there are also, also like Harry Thuman, Underwater will be there. Telex Moscow Disco will be there, and deeper tracks, call it gourmet disco or whatever. They'll also be there, and they'll be there, all of them, for 1 minute 45, round about that, what between 1 minute and a half and 2 minutes. Otherwise, I won't be able to fit in 250 tracks in that time.
Mm.
And but it captures the essence of the song, and yeah, it works
Wow.
like a charm.
That feeling that you talk about was the feeling that got me into this industry right from the beginning, Ben. So I know the power of that feeling.
Let's organize one in the UK.
Oh, I come to Utrecht. I haven't been for a while.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, let's talk about the new Ben Liebrand collections on Mastermix at the moment. Have some fantastic reworks and mashups. Do you always have access to the multi-track parts, a cappellas, instrumentals, etc., from the original artists or labels, Ben, or do you sometimes utilize this latest trend, or should we call it a technological production stage of using stem separation software? This would apply to your productions and possibly to the 250 gig that you've just been talking about.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am somebody who collected and not only collected but kind of archived all the stuff I came by during all these decades. So when doing a mix back in 1983, and they would send me master, I would first record those masters on my Sony F1 system. So way back in 1983, I was already making my own digital copies of these masters, of all the multi-tracks I've came by over the years. I have all the digital files, and by now also I have a whole bunch of friends that help me gather these multi-tracks. And funny enough, also, last weekend, my remix of Roberta Flack's "Killing Me Softly" came out on the original Rhino Records label. And yeah, some of these record companies asked me, where did you get the multi tracks from? And it's a odd situation where basically what it is that there's been a whole era where the record companies didn't care about the tapes or the multi-tracks anymore, or didn't even have the knowledge anymore what is a multi-track. So they got discarded. They got offloaded because they weren't relevant anymore. And I think that a lot of technicians over the years, before I am tossing this thing in the trash, I'm making a transfer and I'll just upload the transfer. I have honestly no idea how all these transfers have got out on the internet. I don't know. But there are a whole bunch of multi-tracks which are out there. And the last couple of years also, you have these Perl scripts, this software with where partly with machine learning, that software is taught the difference between what is a vocal, what are instruments, what are drums, and part for this is also that the machines have learned this by being fed multi-tracks, being fed a cappellas, instrumentals, to kind of make the distinction between what is what. And a whole bunch of clever people have been able to write scripts that now can tell one from the other, and where you can extract vocals from complete tracks, or the instrumentals out of a complete track with science fiction like accuracy. And it's really astounding what is possible today. And some of it might not even be 100% perfect, but if these vocals again are used in a production, And in this new production also, all your compressor, all your stuff is going on, and all your processing is going on to make your sound. Then again, those sounds, those acapellas will sound absolutely natural, because similar compression artifacts are then doing the same thing. Or say for example, you extract an acapella from a track. You feed a complete track in this software, and it gives you the acapella, but you hear a certain amount of pumping going on, because in this original mix there was quite some compression, and that obviously also influences the volume of the vocals. If you put those acapellas in a new production, then that compression will actually do its thing and work perfectly in a new production as well. So you might discard the acapella when you hear it solo, because you hear stuff going on. But then again, if you place it into a new production, then it just works again. So and obviously it gives you a lot of new possibilities of using tracks in that way. And the nerd I am, being interested in these new technologies, especially the new technologies that actually work, that actually get the job done, then this extraction software is it's again a new tool in my library.
Excellent. Pretty much the final question, Ben. We're in 2024 now, so what can your global established audience and your new Mastermix audience look forward to from Ben Liebrand in 2024 onwards for studio productions and more?
Right. So first of all, this entire library of multitracks I have, obviously there are a whole bunch of multitracks that in a remix will find its way to the record companies again. For example, Roberta Flack will be on Rhino Records. On High Fashion Records, we will have Divine Sounds, What People Do for Money. Timmy Thomas, in a connection with the Rhythms of T Connection, his track Why Can't We Live Together. Sharon Brown, I Specialize in Love. Fun Happy Station. Advance, Take Me to the Top. Upcoming also remixes for Midway, and a couple of other tracks. A lot of stuff going on High Fashion Records. So that is going on. But there will also be mini mixes which combine two tracks. And on one of the first editions of Ben Liebrand collections will be my Swan Song, In the Air Tonight, the combination of In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins with Dua Lipa's Swan Song. And you could get into a situation that both record companies absolutely love the result, but the one won't give their half to the other, and the other won't give their half to the one. And then you get in a situation that everybody loves it, everybody would love to get it released, but it's just not possible. It's just not feasible. And then how fantastic is it that you have something like a Mastermix, which enables such releases for the DJ community. So every week I'm making a mini mix, and among those mini mix will be absolute the original multi tracks, and all of these will be absolutely to the standard of all the official releases, and a whole bunch will be made available on Mastermix in the Ben Liebrand collections. And I can't tell you how stoked I am about this, because it's fantastic to have an outlet for these creations. Because don't forget, a lot of them were made just to be heard once, and now we have the possibilities to for people to get them.
It's very exciting. We're jointly super stoked as well. I am the team, everybody. So we're really looking forward to the months ahead with you, Ben, on the platforms. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for a trip across to the Philippines that I joined you and others on. And during a sort of, should we say, a leg stretching exercise during the flight, you and I had a long chat where you gave me lots of valuable information about the perils of the music industry and some tips and advice and everything. And that stayed with me for the rest of my career, Ben. So personally from me, thank you for that. I've always been a great admirer and lover of your work. You have my greatest respect and admiration. And on behalf of the Mastermix team and the audience, we're looking forward to having you on board for the coming months and into the future. So, and thank you for your time for this interview, Ben. So have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Exciting times ahead.
Thank you. Take care, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.